May 2013. I am Pat Cornish, Chair of the Maryland Commission for Women, formerly of Montgomery County, now relocated to Talbot County. The Commission for Women works with Maryland state government to advance solutions and to expand social, political, and economic equity. This year, our primary focus is healthcare reform implementation. It's my pleasure to recognize commissioners with us this evening. I ask you to stand when I call your name. Leviton, Montgomery County. Lynn Futrell, St. Mary's County. Helen Holden, Baltimore City. Velvet Johnson, Prince George's County. Barsha Merther, Charles County. Ginger Miller, Prince George's County. Patricia Omana, Howard County. Betsy Ramirez, Prince George's County. Anita Riley, Carroll County. Debbie Risper, Baltimore County. Kara Tannenbaum, Montgomery County. Rosanna Voigt, Coward County. Dr. Kathleen White, Baltimore County. Wanda Ashley Williams, Howard County. And tonight's event co-chairs, Diane Williams of Prince George's County and Elizabeth Kinney of Anne Arundel County. We would also like to recognize Lucinda Ware, Assistant to Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, who is with us this evening. Lucinda, are you here? Not seeing her. And we also have, earlier today, Senator Riley stopped by. He had to come and go, but he's responsible for securing this room for us this evening. So we're eternally grateful to him. And he said to extend his congratulations to tonight's honorees on his behalf. We have other elected officials in the audience here, many of you, and so what I would like you to do, so that I don't miss anyone, is ask you to please stand and state your name and who you represent. I'd like to start with Congressman Andy Harris, who's from my district right here. So Andy, you want to extend his congratulations to
Delegate Ron George, right here in Athens. Delegate Jay Jacobs, Cecil, Kent, Queen Anne's, and Caroline. Charles, Somerset, Wycombe, Cook County.
Delegate Addie Actor, Dorchester, Talbot, Carolina, Wycombe.
Delegate Susan Krebs, Carroll County.
David Craig, Harper County Executive.
Good evening. I am excited to have all of you here this evening. Thank you for coming. At this time, I will invite Secretary Ted Dollars to the podium to give the welcome on behalf of the Department of Human Resources and present the Maryland Women's History Month proclamation. Secretary Ted Dollars.
Thank you, Diane, for that very nice introduction. I'm happy to be here today with so many remarkable Marylanders who have dedicated themselves to improving the lives of others. In addition to the honorees, I'd like to take a brief moment to recognize Secretary Cryor, fellow member of the Governor's Cabinet. She's a great colleague, and it's a privilege to serve with her. I'm also happy to see many members of the Women's Legislative Caucus here tonight. As you know, the General Assembly is tackling its fair share of controversial issues this year. Many long days and nights. By the way, there are 18 days left in the session, not that any of us are counting. I'd also like to thank Senators Barbara Mikulski and Ben Cardin for their continued support, and of the Maryland's Commission for Women that is housed in DHR, and also recognize Congressman Harris for his attendance tonight. We hold the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame induction ceremony each March as a way of celebrating Women's History Month. We do it to recognize the important role that women have played and the key contributions they have made in helping others in Maryland and across the nation. In fact, on Tuesday, one member of the commission, member Ginger Miller, Last week, she was honored at the White House. The White House. As a champion for change. So I think that deserves a round of applause. And we can let her know she's very much. Women like Ginger and tonight's honorees are trailblazers, and their stories inspire us. This evening, it's my sincere and great pleasure to help welcome 6 new additions to this already incredible group of women. Each of the 6 honorees have demonstrated great courage, perseverance, and selflessness in their service and advocacy for others. As a newspaper writer and later as a state legislator, former delegate Cryor fought for pay equity and crossed party lines to do so. Former Congresswoman Helen Bentley, his name is synonymous with the Port of Baltimore and the maritime industry in Maryland. She was also one of the first women to run for governor of this great state. Dr. Charlene is president of the Maryland State Board of Education. She was the first woman president of Prince George's Community College and was recognized by Washingtonian Magazine as one of the 100 most powerful women in the region. Sauerbrey is a distinguished member of this, former member of the state legislature and an ambassador to the UN Commission on the Status of Women. And as many of you know, she came very close to being the first governor of Maryland. When the first woman is elected governor here in Maryland, they will absolutely owe a great debt of gratitude to both Ambassador Sauerbrey and Congresswoman Bentley. Linda Shevitz is a national leader on issues of gender equity, sexual harassment, and women's history. She also played a critical role in the institution that many of you in this room may recognize, the Maryland Women's Heritage Center and Museum. Without her, I don't think we'd have one. Devoted her life to improving educational opportunities for children, both as an educator and as a member of the Maryland Senate. As an assistant superintendent for Prince George's County, she created one of the first learning laboratories for developmental students. And in her spare time, I'm told she won an award from Harvard for implementing an electronic procurement system in Montgomery County. Like those who preceded them, the women that are being honored here tonight did what they did not out of a desire for recognition, but for a shared desire to strengthen the economic, political, and social standing of women in Maryland. Thank you to all the honorees for their dedication and accomplishment. All of us, whether we're women, men, boys, girls, are better off because of what you did. So I'd like to read a round of applause for tonight's honorees. In honor of this occasion, I am also going to present a proclamation from Governor Martin O'Malley to Pat Cornish, but rather than read the whole thing from start to finish, I'm going to read the one part that I think is particularly apropos for the honorees tonight. So you know how these things go. There's whereas, and they go through all these things. So whereas it is appropriate to celebrate Maryland women and girls for the distinguished record of historic accomplishments renowned throughout the United States and the world. I know all of us agree that not only the 6 honorees here tonight are perfect additions to the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame, but also would be perfect additions to the United States Women's Hall of Fame. And I don't know if there is one for a World Women's Hall of Fame, but I think they'd probably be good candidates for that. Your impact has reached far beyond the state of Maryland, and we thank you again for your contributions, and I congratulate you. I hope you enjoyed it very special.
We also have a letter from Donna Edwards, Congresswoman Edwards. I am pleased to extend my warmest welcome to everyone attending the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame induction ceremony. I appreciate this opportunity to honor those women who work to promote social, political, and economic equality of Maryland women. Today is a day for us to reflect, celebrate, and recognize the courageous efforts made each day by our honorees. I would like to commend these women for their commitment to women and girls issues and their rights, events, organizations, and legislation. As a representative from Maryland's 4th Congressional District, I am honored by your efforts and appreciate your work to further the interests of our community. Sincerely, Donna F. Edwards, Member of Congress. I understand that that several other elected officials have come into the room after we conducted our introductions. Would you like to identify yourselves and tell us who you are and what district you represent?
I'm Delegate Susan Lee, District 16 in Montgomery County.
Anyone else?
I'm Delegate Bill Frank from Baltimore County.
Susan McComas from Harper County.
I'm Councilmember Ingrid Turner from Prince George's County.
Anyone else?
Good evening. Senator Joanne C. Benson, 24th Legislature. Only woman serving in the Senate from Prince George's County, serving with 7 married men.
I see another important person in the room who hasn't identified herself. Francie Glendenning. Former First Lady of Maryland.
I'm impressed.
What can we say, right? Okay, we're ready to move on with the program. Thank you.
Good evening. On behalf of Senator Mikulski, I want to thank you all for letting me share this evening with you. She does send her regrets. She wishes she could be here, but due to her schedule in Washington, she was unable to make it up from the Hill. She does send a few words, though. Dear friends, greeting to the members and guests of the Maryland Commission for Women on the occasion of your annual Women's Hall of Fame induction ceremony in celebration of Women's History Month. I am delighted to join you today to recognize and honor your 6 distinguished honorees who have achieved much in their personal lives, but have also contributed much to their communities and county. I know that they will treasure this moment much like I did for my induction those many years ago. Friends, recently I assumed a big privilege and great responsibility as the chairwoman of the Senate Appropriations Committee. And in this recent election, we shattered another glass ceiling in the Senate, adding 5 new women for a total of 20 women senators. Women leading does make a big difference because we know it's about more than gender, it's about having an agenda. So now I invite you all to join with me. It's time to suit up again. Put on your lipstick, square your shoulders, and continue the fight where we need it. Come join the revolution. Sincerely, Barbara A. Mikulski, United States.
Senator Cardin also is sorry he can't be here tonight. They're voting on the budget, and we don't know how long they're going to be in D.C. But I'm very proud to be here and to have these citations to present on his behalf to these 6 outstanding women. Throughout his career, first in the Maryland House of Delegates, then as a speaker, and 20 years in Congress, and now as a United States Senator, Senator Cardin has championed equal protection under the law for women. His work to elevate the needs of women and families with a focus on health care, financial security, education and job training, and the protection of a woman's fundamental rights of privacy and reproductive freedom. And he is so excited to serve with Senator Mikulski, and Maryland is very lucky to have her now in her new position as chair of the Senate Appropriations Committee. This past year, he was a proud co-sponsor of the Paycheck Fairness Act and the reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. And he was extremely glad to see the passage of the bill he had sponsored to create a National Historic Park on the Eastern Shore in honor of Harriet Ross Tubman. She was the most famous conductor of the Underground Railroad. As part of this legislation, there's also a park in Auburn, New York, and when Senator Hillary Clinton was in the Senate, she was a leader in introducing that legislation. The groundbreaking on the Eastern Shore took place just a couple weekends ago. And speaking of groundbreaking, Senator Cardin is so proud to be serving this 113th Congress with the record number of 20 women senators. That's great, but it's not enough, but we're on our way.
Today, as we all gather during Women's History Month to celebrate adding 6 dynamic women to the archives of the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame, let us be mindful of the significance of these types of celebrations. When we celebrate for life's achievements, and contributions of our 2013 inductees as we have since 1985. We continue to build the foundation that tells our story of women. Our history is our voice. Our achievements are our touch. And our leadership is critical, and I dare say, even essential to the future of our state and our country. Celebrating and honoring the work of lives, great women's past, great women's present, and great women in the future is necessary to ensure that our significant impact is recorded and ensure that our story remains unchangeable and is never overlooked, excluded, or silenced, because when women lead, when women achieve, and when women act, things not only turn out differently, I insist that they turn out for the best. Okay. It has been my great pleasure and honor to have worked with the 2013 Maryland Women's Hall of Fame Selection Committee to do our part to history, documenting the great work of these 6 dynamic honorees that tell our story as women. Selection committee members that are present, please stand as I call your name. Delegate Barbara Flush, Commissioner Jennifer Jones, Maryland Now President Linda Mahoney, Carmen D'Agato Votals, and Commissioner Elizabeth Kenny. Let's give them a round of applause. And now it is time to honor the 2013 inductees. Okay. At this time, I welcome Secretary Gloria Laurel to the podium to introduce her nominee, Helen Bentley.
Good evening. Good evening. To my colleague on the cabinet, Ted, good to see you. And certainly to my former colleague in the Senate, the Congressman, good to see you, Andy. And on behalf of our Governor, Martin O'Malley, and our Lieutenant Governor, and the Maryland Department of Aging, congratulations to all of our honorees, and welcome to all of you. You know, it's a distinct pleasure to be here for Helen Bentley. She is one fabulous woman. Helen, it looks like you're going to get numerous awards this year. This is your year to shine. You know, most of us think of Helen, we think of her as being in Congress. But she has spent 65 years involved with the Port of Baltimore. 65 years. Yeah, I think that deserves applause. And we are just so very proud of her. I have with me tonight, standing here, is she here? Delegate Sue Allman also, who will follow me. So I'm going to be short because it is in your program. Everything that just a smidgen of what she's done is in your program. And so because if you were to listen to Helen, you could listen to her all day and all night. It's fabulous. She is Maryland. You know, her history is a history of women in Maryland. But here's what Helen had to say about herself. She just got the first Citizen Award. That is very prestigious, given to her by the Maryland Senate. And here's her own quote. I must be doing something right. Maryland is classified as a blue state, reliable, liberal. That's true. I'm not only a Republican, but also I'm a woman. And I am still above ground. Yes, you are. And so it gives me pleasure to stand here to nominate you for the Women's Hall of Fame. But you know, I knew we would have standing room only tonight when I looked at all of the names of the honorees. And I know everybody sitting in this room. Jean's not here, but I will say this about Jean. She was wonderful. And Jean's daughter and my daughter went to college together. They went to UVA. They're UVA grads. And so I don't know where the family is tonight, but oh yeah, she's very special to me. And so now I'd like to bring up Delegate Sue Allman also to speak for Helen.
Thank you. Such a pleasure to be here and to honor a fantastic lady. The ladies in leadership would like to offer you a citation from all of us and some flowers on congratulating you for tonight in your prestigious leadership in Maryland.
There's somebody I would like to introduce who's here. Barbara Franklin. Are you still in the room? Stand up. Barbara Franklin is the first White House staffer who was employed specifically for the purpose of finding excellent women to work in Washington in the federal government. That was done by President Nixon, and she has finished a book recently, A Matter of Simple Justice, to talk about how important it is and has been to get women where we are going. We still have a way to go, and I'm not through. And there's one correction I want to make. The gentleman who was speaking, no, the first woman to run for governor in the state of Maryland was Louise Gore, a Republican. You know, I'm old enough that I can say anything I want to say. And I've never been known as one who pulls punches. But tonight I'm going to be kinder and gentler. And that is what President Papa Bush has always accused me of not being. Every time he's seen me, he says, "Helen, are you kinder and gentler?" Tonight I am. Record. And if my husband were still alive and here, he would say, "Helen, behave yourself." You know, he was always a little jealous, and sometimes I think almost resentful that he thought I was married to the Port of Baltimore instead of him. I do appreciate this honor today by the Maryland Commission for Women. And when I was being interviewed out here, and they said, "You know, Helen, we're a little late on you. Everybody always thought you were in there, but we couldn't find your name all of a sudden." But I want to say this, I'm glad tonight to share this honor with my fellow, the other 5, one family, and the other 4 persons. And there are 2 Republicans, Jean Cryor, and it's her family. And Jean we all loved. Ellen Sauerbrey, and then the 3 Democrats. Dr. Dukes, Linda Shavitz, and Beatrice Tignor. I got to say this, it's a pretty prestigious group of honorees. This morning I was at a Women's History Month breakfast, and we had Admiral retired Sally Bryce O'Hara speaking there. And Sally was giving us a little, not lecture, but she referred to an article in the Wall Street Journal this past week, I think, about the queen bees, and that being queen bees is part of the problem of women. Well, I've never been a queen bee. I've only tried to help women as we've gone along with my court. I could say Helen Holton was designated to be my escort today. And Helen said, I hated the name of Helen when my family gave it to me. How many Helens are there here in the room today? Only 2 or 3, there is a couple. Anyhow, it's a great name. I remember the name Helen of Troy, or the person Helen of Troy. Helen of Troy was a myth she was part of Greek mythology. But I'm here to tell you, I'm not a myth. I really have christened 17 American flag ocean-going ships. Commission members, look around the room. There are plenty of women warranting this recognition every year. And I want to say women are an amazing lot. And if, even way back, if the men hadn't had them in the back rooms doing all of the detail work, we would never be where we are today. Applaud yourself. I am appreciative, Commission members, because as I said the other day, I still am above ground. Think what a tsunami it might have been if I wasn't, and all of a sudden I heard what was going on above me, and I decided to explode in order to thank you, and I do thank you.
We're going to have you call this Gloria should get up here.
I am pleased to introduce the daughters of the Honorable Jean B. Cryor to receive today's award given to their mother posthumously in recognition of her service and her achievement. Jennifer, would you please come to the podium and give highlights of your mother?
Thank you. I wish she were here. It does go without saying, but I would think she would just be so delighted to be in front of you receiving this award. I want to thank the Montgomery County Commission for Women, for Judy Von Prather and Chandra Walker Holloway. I'm not sure if she's here, the president, there she is in the back. Thank you for nominating my mother. I would like to share a few things about her. She did, at her 50-year high school reunion, wrote some reflections. So I did draw from that a little bit so you could hear her voice, although I do hear that I sound just like her. I do hear her right now saying, stand up straight and keep this brief. She did say she was a successful politician because she knew that, the part to keep it brief. One of her quotes in her reflection was, I know the real pleasure is making something happen for people who you will never know, who will never know your name. I do think that says a lot about my mother. But she also had a phenomenal career. She was the founder and publisher of the Potomac, Rockville, Bethesda, and Chevy Chase Gazette newspapers. She was elected 3 terms to the Maryland House of Delegates, including service as the ranking member to Ways and Means Committee. She was a champion of education, including her work on the Thornton Commission. She was a champion of women's rights as a commissioner with the Maryland Commission for Women. She was a champion of the Potomac River and the Agriculture Reserve through her work in the legislature and the Planning Commission. And lovingly, she was a champion of her children and her grandchildren. She was on many, many boards, and she had received many awards that we all have in our homes now. She included the Citizen of the Year Award by the Almanac Newspapers, Legislator of the Year by the Maryland Retailers Association, Business Person of the Year by the Maryland Business for Responsive Government, Building a Bridge to Excellence in the Maryland Public Schools by the State Board of Education, Legislator of the Year by the Childhood Brain Tumor Foundation and Registry of Maryland, the Thornton Commission Award by the State Board of Education, Maryland's Top Women's by the Daily Record for 2003 and 2006, the Women's Achievement Award by the Suburban Maryland Business and Professional Women Association, and the Lifetime Service from the Potomac Chamber of Commerce. She was most recently given the award, the Thomas Kennedy Award from the Speaker of the House. And this award was given to her for personal courage and dedication to the principles of liberty and freedom. An example of that, of her courage, was in 2005, the Maryland General Assembly passed a bill advocating by women's rights, creating the Pay Equity Commission to study the persistent gender-based wage gap in our state and make recommendations for its remedy. The bill was vetoed by then Governor Ehrlich. Women's rights groups rallied for overturning the veto, a difficult feat at best, and the legislators lined up along party lines. Only one legislator dared cross that party line and support the override of the veto, again voting against the governor from her own political party. It was a tremendous political risk, and she did what she thought was the right thing to do, not the politically expedient thing to do. In her reflections, she wrote, "I face a difficult campaign. If I do not win, I know I will miss the legislature. Then I will find something else," which she did. "I love being a young wife and mother. I loved being a reporter. I love being an editor and a publisher. They are yesterday. I live in today. I love being a grandmother. I love listening and not having to respond to every crisis. I love seeing the world moving along." At the end, she shared often with us, "Will I be remembered? Will they remember me?" And both Allison, myself, and Deirdre said, "Yes, you have had a wonderful life. They will remember you." She was very, very pleased with this award, and I can't thank you enough. Her legacy was mentoring. She mentored myself and my two sisters. She mentored us in all different ways. One way she did was, probably for me more, not using literature, not using complicated things, but using movies. I still can watch that movie Secretariat every night if I could. My family knows that. And I'm still overjoyed that horse wins. She would watch other movies, and we watched The Verdict. And there was a quote from the end of that movie, and I don't know if you remember The Verdict with Paul Newman. It's about a nurse, which I'm a nurse. And he's defending a person who has been wronged by the healthcare system. And at the very end of the movie, he turns to the jury and he says, "Act as if you have faith, and faith will be given to you. If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves." She taught my sisters and I that, and her grandchildren, over and over again, have faith in yourself, have faith in justice, and that will happen. She spent an enormous time with my son, who is now 18 years old. And she taught him so many things, which today I can see in his eyes. I see the reflections of what she has taught him. But when he was 4, she always told me this story over and over again because it touched her so much. She told him a lot of embellished stories, as if you know my mother. She was a wonderful storyteller. But she told him often about King Arthur. And only how King Arthur can pull out that Excalibur sword is because his heart is pure. And she would go on and on. I'll spare you. But he did at one moment turn to her after moments passed of her telling the story, and he said to her, "Is my heart pure?" And of course she said yes. The last comment I want to make is, before I make the last comment, I would like to say I do believe that my sisters and I feel very, very in gratitude to my mother. My older sister, all three of us had to get master's degrees, which we did. My older sister is the president and owns her own company. She was on the board of visitors at the University of Virginia. Allison's an art Cryor My younger sister is Deirdre Cryor, and she's the president of a school, St. Mary's Academy in Denver, Colorado. I recently was promoted to senior vice president at Care First with a wonderful opportunity, taking my nursing background as well as my knowledge of the healthcare system to try to help fix our terrible system. And I love this job that I have. I don't think any of us could do our work or do our jobs without the mentoring and the wonderful part of my mother that she gave us. But this is also from her reflection. It says, "The best moment that I have known as a person was a few months ago. My granddaughters, Emma Jean and Anna Catherine, who are here today, ages 6 and 4, wanted to ride their battery-operated cars on their driveway, which we did use those battery-operated cars in all those parades. They live in a wonderful house with a long driveway, great trees and a stream. 'Not towards the stream,' I said to them. 'Drive away from the stream.' Jennifer was nearly weeding her garden, her flower garden, like I'm a woman of leisure." That's this quote. "Grandma is a warrior," Emma said mockingly. Anna, with her toddler accent, said, "Is she a warrior? Grandma's a warrior?" And Jennifer said, "Did you say warrior? Did you say warrior? Grandma is a warrior." That she is. She said, "Yes, I am a warrior, and I'm a warrior."
We've all cried.
Yeah, there we go. Great.
Next, I will welcome Aretha Bridgewater Sims to the podium to introduce her nominee, Dr. Charlene Mickens Dukes.
Thank you. I think Dr. Duke's senator is here. I told him that I'm doing this, but that he could say congratulations. Come on up, Senator Peters. It gives me a great deal of pleasure to introduce the 8th and the first female president of Prince George's Community College, Dr. Charlene Dukes. Under Dr. Dukes' leadership, Prince George's Community College was the only one in the state of Maryland and was the one of 16 community colleges to be named by the White House as the champion for change. And this is the 16th in the country. Prince George's Community College established a partnership with the Prince George's County Public Schools in the creation of what we call a middle college. It's known as the Academy of Health Sciences. This is the first such program in the state of Maryland, which enables dual high school and college enrollment for 9th graders. And at the end, upon graduation, they will receive a high school diploma as well as an associate degree. President Barack Obama visited Prince George's Community College in March 2012. And after he was introduced to the crowd, and also he was introduced to Dr. Dukes, he announced to the crowd, "I have just met the real president, Dr. Charlene Dukes." From 2002 through 2006, she served on the appointed Board of Education of Prince George's County. In 2007, she accepted an appointment from Governor Martin O'Malley to serve on the Maryland State Board of Education, and now she is the president. In October 2007, the African American Alumni Council of the University of Pittsburgh recognized Dr. Dukes as an outstanding alumnus. And in 2008, she received the Distinguished Alumnus Award from Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And now I am especially proud to introduce to you someone that the Washingtonian magazine called one of the 100 most powerful women in the Washington metropolitan area, Dr. Dukes. So I have to talk.
And, you know, like college presidents do, we just bring out pieces of Xerox paper with bullets on them. But yes, I certainly do want to thank you all. This is such an honor and a pleasure. And it is not because of the work that I do. It is really because of all of the people who are with me and beside me at Prince George's Community College and at the Maryland State Board of Education and the Maryland State Department of Education. So I'd like to start off by just acknowledging a few people. I have with me today my classmates from Leadership Greater Washington, so thank you all for being here. We had class today and we all left early. Members of the Maryland State Board of Education and the State Superintendent, Dr. Lillian Lowry. My sisters, and what I believe is the greatest sorority in the world, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. My good friends, and they know who they are because they've been with us from the time we moved to Maryland in 1995, and their families helped to ensure that my son, Maurice, while we were working, was well fed and well taken care of. So Carol and Gail, you know who you are, and thank you for that. Prince George's Community College, my colleagues who are here today working with me to serve 44,000 students, a predominantly black institution that is very much committed to access, opportunity, and success. The members of the Board of Trustees who lead and guide me and work with me every day, and thank you to the board members who are here and my co-workers. I have a few co-workers in the room as well. And then I have my family, my brothers and my sisters and their families, and I'm just going to ask them to stand so you'll know who they are. My brothers and my sisters, you all know who you are. And my mom and dad would have been here today, but my dad is ill and was rushed to the hospital. And after almost 60 years of marriage, my mom was just insistent that she wasn't going to leave him, but she made sure that my son is over there videotaping all of this. So I would introduce you all to who has, since my husband and his father passed away, has become the probably second love of my life, and that's my son, Maurice Dukes. And then I'd like to thank the Maryland Women's Commission, and for me, most importantly, the Prince George's County Women's Commission, because I know that I wouldn't be standing here if it were not for all of you, your belief in me, and your belief that in some way that I've made a contribution, not just to Prince George's County, but to the state of Maryland. So thank you so much. You know, I'm really honored and humbled and just in awe at receiving this recognition, because I believe that all that I am and all that I can be is because of my faith, my family, and my commitment to serve. And I'm just going to leave you with a very short story. We come from humble beginnings, and I tell this story often. I really didn't even know what it meant to sleep in your own bed until I went to college. I'm not going to call her out, but my youngest sister, we shared a bed from almost the time that she was born. And when I went away to college and I got in that single bed, because I went to college at times when they had single beds, not the kind of luxury living that young people have today, I remember rolling over and over and over and just touching the wall and not another warm body, and I didn't really know how to react to that, but it felt good, I will tell you that. But what I recall is that when my dad was growing up and he graduated from high school and he wanted to be an architect, and he was told, because it was the early 1940s, that probably the best he could do, because he was good with his hands, was to be a carpenter. And that he was directed and moved to do that kind of work. My mom did not graduate from high school, but I remember sitting around the table when I was probably in the 8th or 9th grade, and we all helped her as she studied for her GED. And then she actually received that GED as the person at the top of the class. And that was important to us, because what it said to us, and my dad, I will tell you, I don't ever recall him working less than 3 jobs. Now, I have 8 brothers and sisters, and there's probably a reason for that, because there were a lot of people to feed. And every Sunday, I can recall when he would take us to a small ice cream place called All Wines. It was an ice cream store, and it was inexpensive enough that all 9 of us could get our own ice cream cone, and that was a good thing. It was also during a time that, thank goodness, there was no seatbelt law, because none of us, we would never all fit in the car at one time. But he would do that to give my mom a break so she could enjoy a few hours on Sunday afternoon to herself or with her friends. And as we would return home, he would sit outside of the steel mill. And those of you who are from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, or from Western PA, you know that we were riddled with steel mills all up and down the Ohio, Monongahela, and Allegheny rivers. And he would say, I work here every day, so none of you will ever have to. And I think that that's something that, quite frankly, has carried all of us through, that it is our commitment to live the dreams of our parents, our mom and dad. And then every night, I remember they would come into the room and we would say the Lord's Prayer in unison, and then he would stop and he'd say, what's the family motto? And the family motto was all for one and one for all. And that's the way we live our lives today. So thank you all so very much for anything that I could do here in Maryland. It's because it's all for one and one for all. Thank you.
I'd like to call our next presenter, Delegate Szeliga. She's going to introduce Ellen Sauerbrey.
Good evening. I'm Delegate Szeliga, and any of the ladies in leadership that are here, if you'd like to join us up here with Sue, please feel free to make your way up here. Sorry, this is kind of short. Not for tall people. The Honorable, there she is, the Honorable Ambassador Ellen Sauerbrey. Ellen rose up through the grassroots political world running campaigns. She decided to run for office, challenging the male-dominated political establishment. She won. Delegate Ellen Sauerbrey was the first woman elected to be the minority leader of the Republican caucus in the House of Delegates. She served well as a leader there and grew the minority representation in the House. Ellen, she was not the first woman on the ballot, thank you, Helen Bentley, but she was our Republican gubernatorial candidate twice for governor. Though not successful, many like-minded candidates were elected because of Ellen's hard work. After that, Ellen Sauerbrey went off to run a $1 billion census project for the federal government. President George Bush nominated Ellen to represent the United States internationally because Ellen was smart, thoughtful, and hardworking. In 2002, Ellen Sauerbrey was appointed as an ambassador to be the U.S. representative to the United Nations Commission on the Status of Women. In this post, Ambassador Sauerbrey focused mostly on the needs for more education for women and the importance of empowering women economically and politically. These are things that Ellen Sauerbrey still works on today. January 2006, Ambassador Sauerbrey was appointed by President Bush as the Assistant Secretary of State for Population, Refugees, and Migration, where she worked directly under Condoleezza Rice, our Secretary of State. Ellen's accomplishments with refugees led to numerous awards and international recognition. What has Ellen Sauerbrey meant to those of us who know her today? While achieving worldwide recognition for her work with refugees and women, Ellen remains a humble and gracious friend to many. Ellen's phone is always on.
Ellen's kitchen table is always open. Ellen can be counted on for guidance and support from her many years of public service. Ellen Sauerbrey, role model, true leader, smart, gracious, helpful, and loving wife of Will, back there, hey Will. Mentor, great advice based on experience from simple to complex. Still working hard for the Republican Party. Friend, a beautiful smile and a hug always. Thoughtful and considerate, a true friend. These are the ladies in leadership. There are 12 ladies Republicans elected in the House of Delegates today, led by Delegate Sue Allman. And our nickname for Ellen, which sums it up best of all, is not Honorable Ambassador Ellen Sauerbrey, but Ellen Sauerbrey, our fairy godmother.
You're the best. Congratulations.
Thank you to this wonderful group of ladies in leadership, the people trying to hold up the Republican banner in Annapolis. I really appreciate your nomination to this position. And Kathy, especially, I know how hard you worked to put this together. And Sue Allman, whose husband Carl came to work for me when I was running a campaign in 1976 for Larry Hogan for governor. And Carl was 12 years old. And he was my first opportunity to really mentor someone who went on to become the Secretary of State of Maryland. To the Commission on the Status of Women, excuse me, I'm in the wrong pew here. The Maryland Commission for Women, and for this honor. It is really such a special opportunity and occasion to be with the distinguished women here on the front row, but also to be in the company of people like Harriet Tubman, and I remember seeing that Claire Barton, I think, was one of your nominees in the past. It is really quite special. And to a lot of friends that are here, people that have helped me over the years, I want to say a special thank you. None of us get anywhere unless we have the shoulders of others to stand on. And to my husband, Will, who has had a lot of unwashed socks and cold meals because I've been running off doing something else, but has always been a supporter of whatever it is I've tried to do. Thank you very much. You know, as I've thought about this, you realize that you never know where your life is going to take you. And I think back, and I've often said to others, I think I led 3 lives. I started out as a science teacher in Baltimore County, and then a politician, and finally a diplomat. But I can tell you that there is nothing that prepares you for anything like being a teacher. And just out of curiosity, how many people in this room at one time were teachers? Look at that. If you can stand in front of a class, as I did at that time, of 40 kids, high school science students, and teach, you're ready to take on, I think, just about anything. I have often been asked also by friends and you know, fellow associates, how on earth do you go from being a biology teacher in Towson to having the opportunities that I've been so blessed to have? And when I think of some of the really special opportunities recently, it was to be negotiating with the government of Jordan that was not allowing Iraqi refugee girls to be educated. And some of those girls had been out of school for 3 years by that time. And to convince the government of Jordan to allow these girls to go to school, and then to go over there and go to a school where an Iraqi girl and a Jordanian girl were standing together, and they were best friends. That was really special. To be in countries as varied as Mongolia, the Ivory Coast, Moldova, teaching women how to run for political office. What a great, great opportunity. And working with the refugees, the most often terrorized and oppressed people in the world, helping to get them out of a situation. I think back to a group of refugees, almost 100,000 refugees from Bhutan that had never known anything but the inside of a refugee camp in Nepal. I'm working with the Prime Minister of Nepal and the King of Bhutan and convincing them after 20 years it was time to let something else happen. And we now have 50,000 Bhutanese refugees in this country who are coming along and will be wonderful citizens. These have been such special things that I've had the opportunity to do. And how on earth does somebody, make these kinds of transitions? And I want to tell you a personal story about how an event in your life can so change the direction of your life. And my husband is a first-generation American, his mother and father from East and West Germany. We weren't married but a few years when he had never met a lot of his family. And we spent a summer in a country divided by a wall. And I had the first chance in my life to see how differently people behave under two different forms of government. People living in freedom, prosperous, doing really well. People living under communism, oppressed, no prosperity, no progress. It was the first time I had ever even thought about what does the word freedom mean. And it brought me home pretty passionate about making sure that we did everything that we could to preserve freedom. And it changed the course of my life. It put me on a course to be working not only in this country in every way possible to make sure that we contained and continued the freedom that has made this the great country that it is. So I got into politics. I became a pretty good political organizer. Ran for the House of Delegates, was told women can't win in this district by the Republican chairman in my county. And that was like waving a red flag in front of a bull. And I proved a woman could win. Went on and ran for governor. Took a big risk because it was highly, obviously, a very long shot. Didn't quite make it, but found out that when God closes one door, he opens another. And through life, when God has closed a door for me, he has opened another. And it gave me the opportunity to go on and do something that was the most gratifying thing that I've ever done in my life, which has been working with women throughout the world, with refugees, mostly women and children, providing life-saving assistance, helping to get refugee situations resolved so that they could be resettled and not live the rest of their life in a refugee camp. It's been the best years of my life in terms of satisfaction, and being able to know that you go to work every day saving lives is about as special as it can get. So I just want to again say a hearty thank you to so many people who have made it possible for me to do the things that I've been able to do. And just close with a few observations for young women who might be in this room. Find a thing that you really passionately believe in and pursue it wherever it takes you. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't do it, because you can. Never give up, never give in, be a risk taker, and understand that sometimes you win and sometimes you don't, but if you don't, you pick yourself up and you find another place to put your energies. And my last word of advice is act like a lady, but work like a horse.
About Linda Shellings. So now it is my great privilege to introduce my friend and colleague, I can't believe I'm saying this, of more than 25 years,
Linda Pollock-Shevitz. As an inductee to the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame for 2013, Linda brings to this well-deserved honor a passion, commitment, and spirit as an advocate for educational equity and social justice. Picture a student, whether it is a Muslim student in Frederick, an African-American child in Cambridge, a high school youngster with disabilities in Silver Spring, a group of girls in a Baltimore City middle school, a Latino boy in St. Mary's County. Linda has worked tirelessly to generate enduring programs and policies which have helped them all learn in a safe, welcoming environment. She is their advocate. Linda is a native Marylander. She went to public schools in Silver Spring and attended the University of Maryland as an undergraduate and graduate student. She is a total Terp.
And a Redskin.
That's right, and a Redskin fan, sorry. As the Educational Equity Specialist at the Maryland State Department of Education for more than 30 years, and currently as the Director of the Equity Assurance and Compliance Office, she has worked with every school district in Maryland to eliminate discrimination. Linda's work throughout Maryland has served as a model for educators in virtually every other state. At the national level, she served as president of AGILE, the Association for Gender Equity, Leadership, and Education, and a leader in the National Coalition for Gender Equity and Education. This year, Linda was honored by one of our country's most important professional communities, the National Association for Multicultural Education, receiving the National Equity and Social Justice Advocacy Award. Linda is a visionary with a practitioner's nature. It is this combination that has enabled her to achieve at the highest level. Whether it is through her leadership of the Maryland Women's History Project or our Maryland Women's Heritage Center, the first of its kind in the nation, or COVE, the Maryland's Coalition Opposed to Violence and Extremism. Anything is possible as long as Linda is involved. But for all the accolades, none of which we would put to music in the way that Linda would so easily, it is Linda's quiet and loving nature, the humility with which she does her dedicated work, and the respect that Linda shows to all who know her that deserve our gratitude. Add to this her fierce commitment and love for her family, Steve, Beth, Ari, and her delicious grandson, David. Her extended family and friends. These are the qualities that touch our hearts and minds. Inducting Linda into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame gives deserved recognition for all she has done, and I know will continue to do. But even more so, her induction brings sustained honor to the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Thank you.
As so many people have said, none of us do this alone, and there's so many people that I want to thank that I won't be able to mention everyone's names, but I have to thank Susan and Jill. Who have been friends and are friends and colleagues and mentors and role models and support systems and just have been incredible working with for, I thought it was closer to 30 years. It's really an honor to be part of the inductees this year and in past years and also in present years and future years, as I know it will be. I want to say a quote from Lucille Clifton, who is our Poet Laureate of Maryland and an award-winning illustrator and writer. I need to know their names, those women I have walked with, all those women who could have known me. Where in the world are their names? Well, one of the ways we've saved their names and honored their names is through the creation of the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame, and we want to thank the women legislators and the Commission for Women for doing that. The other names that we want to remember at the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, we have an Unsung Heroines group, and we want to remember all of their names too, and these are people that have helped our families and our communities and our society become a better place. Before I give some thanks to particular organizations, I want to tell a few anecdotes about the three areas that were mentioned in Susan's introduction. One was working as the Title IX coordinator, the federal law that prohibits sex discrimination in education and in gender equity. The other was women's history, and the third was social justice and multicultural education. A few Title IX stories. Janet Reno and Ruth Bader Ginsburg spoke at the Department of Justice, and they were talking about women in the law. And they were both denied admission to several law schools. Title IX hadn't been passed yet. One of the things is access to education. So they said, both of them, they told us we could never be lawyers, but they didn't tell us that we could never be Supreme Court justices. The other area that Title IX covers is sexual harassment, and thousands of people have been trained in combating sexual harassment and making sure it doesn't happen again. But there was only, Title IX was only seen as preventing sexual harassment of students by adults, until a Maryland woman, Verna Williams, who was a lawyer, was chosen as the second African-American woman in the United States to be the primary arguer of a Supreme Court case, which was seeing if Title IX should also cover sexual harassment of students by students. She won the case, and again, the impact on students across the country, looking not just at what happened with adults, but what happens student to students, was crucial. The third area which got the most publicity of anything was athletics. And we all know, we hear all the stories about women who couldn't be athletics and never had teams. And Hillary Clinton shared that when she was in high school, girls only played half-court basketball, and she asked her teacher why, and he said, because girls aren't strong enough to play full-court basketball. But my favorite story, I'm looking at my daughter Beth, she was in 7th grade, and her phys ed teacher told her that all the girls should sit on the sidelines and watch the boys play soccer because they were better athletes and better soccer players. After this, she went up to him and she said, you know, not only is that unfair, but it's illegal under Title IX. And my mother can give you a workshop. And of course, this led to more things like Dominique Dawes becoming one of the first people to win a gold medal in the Olympics, both as a team member and as an individual. And she was recently named this year by President Obama as the White House Council on Physical Fitness and Health. He appointed 2 people, and she is one of the 2 and has traveled all over the country talking to young people about the importance of physical education and athletics. There also, for the first time, were more American women in the Olympics this year than men, which was quite a change. And the second area is women's history. Well, in the Women's History Project and the Maryland Women's History Project, both nationally and in the state, started in the early 1980s. Jill Greenberg was the founder, and then I was lucky enough to adopt it when I started working at the Maryland State Department of Education in 1982. The reason we were doing this, one of the reasons was at that time we had looked at some history books, 700-page high school history books. How many pages do you think mention women? 43 out of 700. That was one reason. The other one, students were asked to report on their unit on the history of Maryland in school. And Alexa Champion, who was age 8 at the time, wrote an essay, and she was invited to Governor Hughes's mansion to report out on Women's History Month. And what she said was, I especially enjoyed studying Mary Young Pickersgill, who you met earlier today, who made the Star Spangled Banner. But I wonder why we studied one woman and 3 men. Why don't you have 3 men and 3 women if you want to have interesting lessons? Remember, there are other women who made important contributions. If we study mostly men, then it looks like the women didn't do anything. She also pointed out they didn't study people from a variety of races. This was age 8, Alexa Champion. The other example, at age 14, one of the women that we featured, young women, we were looking at young women leaders because the Maryland State Department of Education and the Commissioner for Women for 20 years produced a packet that went to every school in the state honoring women in an area, women in the arts, women in the sciences, women in politics, women in law and government. We decided to do one honoring young women leaders. Sierra Myers, who was age 14, she had her own business cards. She considered herself a motivational speaker and a leader in writing and motivational speaker. And I know you can't see her way in the back, but she created a magazine called Do Rag where she featured students' poetry, and her interests were, believe it or not, at age 14, civil rights, human rights, friendship, and relationships. She wrote a poem called Standing Tall, which she read when she came to be honored at the State Department of Education. Just want to read 2 short verses of that to show you the importance of women's history. Dealing with the trials of life is the one thing that makes us who we are. We are created equally, being both from near and far. Different shades of skin on the outside, but beautiful personalities within. No one can really justify what makes women so unique. We have climbed the mountains and have even fallen in the dark. We still have our pride and will never fall apart. Yes, my sisters, you have been through it all, but I still see you standing tall. And that was her motto. The third area is that of social justice and equity, and educational equity and equity in general society. The Maryland State Department of Education had established an office called the Office of Equity, Assurance, and Compliance. There are a few people out there that have been that or were in the office. And it was mid-1970s when it was created. It has done discrimination complaints both through the department and helped out in all the 24 school systems to have policies. And what this is the intersection of all the areas of equity. It's gender, it's race, it's national origin, it's disability, it's sexual orientation, economics, efforts to assure that there's equity in education for all of our students, to respect their abilities to achieve both socially, personally, and academically. Some of the organizations I just want to mention to thank, the Mid-Atlantic Equity Center that Susan talked about, and also the Maryland Multicultural Coalition and an Education That's Multicultural Network where 24 school systems send people once a month. The last thing I want to do is to thank my family and friends who have been incredible. And also to mention there's some family members here that have traveled from out of state and a friends group called the Wild Women Writers Group who also have traveled from out of state. But my deepest thanks goes to my family. My grandparents who were escaping anti-Semitism early in the 1900s and coming to America for a better life, Sam and Rebecca. My parents, Dorothy and Harry Pollack, who instilled in us love of family and appreciation for all cultures. My daughter Beth, whose love of family and passion for teaching have touched the lives of many of her students, and she emphasizes social justice and global issues in her teaching. My grandson, who I want to stand up. My grandson David, Beth and Ari's son. For those of us that are grandparents, we know how much energy they bring to our lives. His caring nature, he's 6 years old, almost 7. He's enriched our lives through his energy, his enthusiasm, his curiosity, and his humor. And most of all, for some 50 years now, my husband Steve, whose love, his commitment, his understanding, his unconditional support has been the mainstay of my life these 50 years, both personally and professionally. And when I like to close now, but I would like my daughter and son-in-law Ari and David and Steve to come up.
Good night.
I'm going to introduce another former teacher. There's something special about teachers. How many are teachers again? Have been teachers? All right. And I'm going to get Senator Peters to come back up and assist me. Who implemented legislative processes to meet and advance the social, economic, educational needs of our communities. Dr. Beatrice Tignall.
Before I say all the things that I had planned to say tonight, when your last name begins with T, you stand in between the people in this audience and the reception. So I will take that into consideration. Good evening, and thanks to each of you for taking the time to attend this well-planned event. There's so many of you here tonight that I haven't seen in a long time, and it certainly has been a pleasure chatting with you. It is an occasion that I've looked forward to for several months, and tonight I am just extremely honored to be inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. I am very pleased for this recognition. For every nominee that was made for this honor, they were as capable of being here tonight as I am. I would be remiss if I did not say that every challenge that I faced only strengthened me to make me the person I am today. Now, all the other things I am is in the program that you have, so you can read that. Therefore, I share with you that it was not my effort alone that brought me here tonight. So let me briefly take a minute to thank a few people in attendance, as well as those who could not make it, but sent wonderful messages. And to all the women on whose shoulders I stand. I would like to acknowledge, although deceased, a woman, a professor, an author, an educator who had a significant impact on my life, Dr. Marjorie H. Parker, and all of my sorority sisters who are Alpha Kappa Alpha know who I'm talking about. Then to my daughter for sharing the special time with me, and would you stand, Patricia? I know I'm embarrassing you. Again, thanks to my friends and colleagues for coming so that I could share this evening with them. You know who you are, but a special thanks to all of you who helped make this night a reality. Thanks for actually surprising me for having a bus. I thank you very much. When I was notified that I was being accepted in the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame, I began to think about the journey that brought me here. Certainly it wasn't the skill that one uses on a resume to apply for a job, not the talents one uses to win contests, and not the abilities one shares with others to complete tasks, and nor the competition needed to win at sports, but a combination of individuals and teams of people with whom I've had the opportunity to work and play, laugh and cry. The women who opened doors for me to enter, set goals for me to follow, and provided me the wisdom to know that all battles do not have to be fought openly, but instead be wise enough to make footprints by leading, sharing, caring, and encouraging. So to those women who came before me, this recognition tonight is for you. And for the women who will come behind me, please take the time to learn more about each inductee and listen and learn from their stories. But most of all, make your dreams a reality. Set your own pace and believe in yourself. In that belief, you will learn to survive challenges. In your life, you will have blessings and you will have burdens. I certainly have had both. But I will tell you that the burdens will make the blessings feel so much better. On a closing note,
Please do not give up, and I think you've heard this all through the evening. Do not give up. Even if you are convinced that your work or your dreams will not come to fruition, remember, it is never, never over unless you want it to be. And I think tonight you see this example in many of us. We did not give up. For those who have touched my life in any way, I'm truly grateful for your support. And to the Maryland Commission of Women and to your staff, I thank you.
Prince George is serving in the Senate.
Let me just say this before making this quick presentation. If you don't know it, I'm sure most of you do, that this year we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the women's suffrage movement. And we did a fantastic job here. We actually had a joint session of both the House and the Senate where all 57 women of the Women's Caucus were able to participate. And it's important because it's really important that we remember how significant and important our roles are in this society and in this legislature. We happen to be 57 women strong, but yet we're still only less than 1/3 of the population of the elected officials that are down here. Women make a difference. Yes. Women make a difference. Presenting tonight to our Executive Director, Jill Greenberg, the plaque that will be a part of history to acknowledge your induction into the Hall of Fame. Again, congratulations. We cannot be more proud of the women who were inducted this evening. Thank you all. Thank you so much.
The president of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center is Frances Hughes Glendinning, and she was here, so I did want to acknowledge her, have her come up. This piece of lovely names was all that the Women's Hall of Fame existed as until the Women's Heritage Center opened. Each year, the Maryland Law Library was kind enough to have put the names of the group for that year onto a wooden plaqueboard and add the names for each year. And that was what it consisted of, the Hall of Fame. Well, now that with so much support from so many of you and your organizations and individuals, we've actually been able to open the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, the first of its kind in the country. And we have to credit really the Maryland Commission for Women, which is in DHR, where Secretary Dallas is, the Maryland Department of Planning, and the Maryland State Department of Education for all of their support to help that move forward. And we have to reemphasize, too, that the Hall of Fame that opened in 1985 was a joint effort of the Maryland Commission for Women and the women legislators of Maryland, a joint collaboration. And that's really important because sometimes the collaboration isn't always clear, and the commission does do a huge amount of work, which we know wonderfully. And to all of you, thank you.
Can we give her a big round of applause for all of her hard work? I also want to acknowledge Marcia Wise, our Executive Director of the Women's Legislative Caucus. Please stand up, Marcia. She does a lot of work for us. Thank you all again.
Welcome. This is the first inductee to the Maryland Women's Heritage Center in the year 2013. She's a woman that most of us thought was already in the Hall of Fame because of all that you've done in your life.
You know, I'm glad you said that because I kept wondering, why am I not in the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame?
And we did too.
There it was. None of us were putting two and two together.
Right. And all of us, and we went looking for the people who were in, and we said, her name isn't there. And that's how it finally got nominated.
Now
and
I
of course,
feel better.
Yeah.
Because I thought, my God, all these male organizations have recognized me, and the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame hasn't.
No.
Now I know why.
Yes.
Thank you.
And it's so well deserved.
Thank you.
I saw some of the films of you when you were on television in Baltimore.
I had
decades
15
ago?
great years doing my show. It was a port to build a city and state. I was able to produce that television show, and it was videoed on WMAR TV for 15 years, from 1950 to 1965. And when color television came in, the price became a little pricey, and so we shut down. But they keep talking today about the port needs more recognition, more visibility, and I said you need another series of shows.
Absolutely.
Like the port to build a city.
And you were really a pioneer because at that time, not many women had shows.
There were very few women, very few people who did their whole. I raised the money, I did the filming, I did the scripting, I was hostess. That was it.
Yeah.
It was everything
It was
at
all
that
you.
time. Yeah.
And now the port is named for you.
The port is now named for me, and I'm very honored with
Yes.
that.
And again, that's a legacy that will go on forever.
I sure hope so.
You want to talk a little bit about, you've had so many different careers. What would you like to share about something in your
Let me say
background
this.
from there?
I started out, I was raised in the mountains in Nevada. And I came to Baltimore after graduating at the University of Missouri, where incidentally, my first job at the university, because I wanted to go there, was 10 cents an hour in a drugstore. But I wanted to be there, and I was. After I was graduated from the University of Missouri, I went to work for United Press in Indiana, and then I bounced out to Idaho, and that was very short-lived, like 5 weeks.
5 weeks.
I wanted
in
to come
Idaho.
east again. And I wrote to every publication in the East. And I was packed to go to Louisville Courier. But the Sun paper sent me a telegram and said, we have a reporter's job, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a reporter's job. Not on a woman's page. I wanted a reporter's job. They offered me $5 a week more than anybody else, and they were going to pay my way from the West to Baltimore. And here I am.
Here you are.
I've never left.
And you've been in Maryland ever since.
I have. That was 1945.
I think it's important because some of the people who will be seeing this are quite a bit younger than you or me.
Yes.
And they have no idea when you got a telegram what that meant in those days.
Well, a telegram is what Western Union sent out. And that's the way people were able to communicate with each other quickly. Because that was the only way we had was, I want to telegram somebody, I want to telegraph somebody. Otherwise, it was the U.S. postal mail. And it was a Western Union telegraph that was delivered to the apartment where I was living at that time. They had little delivery boys and little delivery girls who brought them to you.
And that's hard, I think, for youngsters to imagine today when they walk around with the cell
And
phones.
messages, instant messages,
It's
wherever
with
they
you
are.
wherever they go. And that's such a huge difference. That's why I thought it was important
Yes,
for them to
you're
hear
right.
about that.
It is.
Because the historical context is so important.
Yes, it is, and how different it was.
Yes. And you broke so much ground. Were there some experience?
And let me tell you,
Yeah.
when I was traveling from Missouri to Indiana to Idaho and back to Baltimore, that was all on the railroad train. We didn't have automobiles readily available, and it was wartime. And so you had to go where you could. And also at that time, you were not able to jump jobs just because you wanted to. You had to get written permission from where you were working before you could change jobs because of the shortage of people to do the jobs that were needed in the country.
And this is during World War II.
This was World War II.
It's very important. Again, you went through, as you progressed, through very activist roles. Almost each role you were in was groundbreaking. Would you share some of
Well,
those?
I will. I was happy to. I got in covering the port of Baltimore by accident. I was actually covering labor for the Baltimore Sun. And I became labor editor because the previous labor editor left, and I was given that task. And there was a labor strike at the shipyards. And I became very unhappy with the way I felt Bethlehem Steel had treated its people. So I went to my city desk and I said, I want off the labor beat. Give me some. So they said, okay, we haven't had anybody at the port since before the war. Go cover the port. And that's how and I've never left.
You never left.
I've never left.
If there are any last thoughts that you'd like to share?
I think when we're talking to our youngsters as they're coming along in life, and they ask, how do we do it? What do we do? I said, one thing you have to do is remember your character, your integrity, and the way you do things is what is going to follow you through life. And don't ever, ever think you're going to be able to get away from those. If you go in the wrong direction on any of them, you're going to have a hard time coming back. Be honorable, help people, and do all of the things that are really classified good, and it'll help you.
You hear that, all of you young people? Thank you so much.
Okay.
Beatrice Tigner, welcome.
And thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, and congratulations on your induction into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much. It's quite an honor.
It really is, and well-deserved.
Well, there are a lot of people who could walk in these shoes, so
Yeah.
I thank you, though.
Would you talk a little bit about what you think in your work might have brought you to this day?
Well, I started out as a teacher in Southern Maryland and fell in love with children, and that didn't last long. The love is still there, and the love continued, but then I began to move on and move from teaching to getting involved in the teaching of teachers how to teach, and then moving on to politics, and from politics to procurement and to work with local government. So I've been in all forms of government now, from local government, municipalities, state government, and haven't been in federal.
Okay. Still time.
No, that's okay. No, I don't think so.
Is there anything that you would think about in your early life, that anyone who inspired you, or anything in your early life that might have led you in these directions?
Well, when I was younger, my life for me in rural Southern Maryland was a matter of books. So books were very important to me. It was very important to my family. And I guess they were my first mentors. They told me that I wanted to travel. They told me that I wanted to see different things, meet different kinds of people, learn cultures, religion, the whole, all the things that make a person diverse.
It opened all your horizons.
All my doors opened by books, and there was a great professor at the university where I attended that worked with me a lot, and she's an author. She's deceased now. She was an author, she was a professor, an educator, and gave me a lot of good tidbits to always believe in yourself and don't give up.
Yeah, that's a good description of a mentor, isn't
I
it?
think she was a great mentor.
Yes.
Books were my first mentor. Unfortunately, it wasn't a person, it was books, but I think there were many authors, though, so I guess there were a lot of people that I had as mentors.
Of your accomplishments, which are so many, what would you feel the most proud of as a legacy that you'd be leaving?
Believe it or not, as being a teacher, because whenever you teach young people, you never see the fruits of what you've done for many, many years. And I taught in elementary school, high school, community college, and universities. So I taught some of the same children some of the same people 3 times. I taught them as 5 and 6 year olds. I taught them as community college, and then as graduate students. So I really saw the progress. So for me, that was that was it.
And it's so rewarding,
It's
and
so
you affected
rewarding.
so many lives.
Yes, you do, and you begin to affect the children of their children of their children. So it continues. It doesn't stop with just the one person.
Yeah, which is so important.
It's very important to me.
Are there any personal comments you'd like to say for those young people of today and tomorrow?
Well, everything doesn't happen overnight. You have to work at things. And if you really believe in something and you don't want to give up, you got to keep going. You got to keep believing in it. You know, at first you don't succeed, you got to try again. You don't keep changing things because you don't succeed the first time. If you really believe in yourself and you really believe that you want to do this, then you can't give up. You're going to have obstacles in life, but you can walk around obstacles, you can jump over them, you can do whatever, but you can't give up.
Well, you're a great model example
Yeah,
of
a lot
that.
of perseverance is needed to get what you want.
With Linda Shevitz today. Linda is with the Maryland State Department of Education, but she's been a national leader on issues of gender equity and prejudice reduction, and she's being inducted today into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's a real honor and privilege.
Well, could you tell us a little bit about maybe what in your life might have led you to these wonderful achievements?
I think from the very beginning, I was very active in school and different activities. And then in high school, I became real active with the neighborhood youth organization, which did a lot of civil rights work and a lot of citizenship work and community work. And I think that kind of sparked me, and I became active on the national level, went to the national conference, went to an international conference in Israel for 6 weeks. And our focus was really on civil and human rights. And that's what kind of got me really dedicated.
Yeah, and you never left that dedication.
No.
Would you talk a little bit about the work that you've done on women's history, because the Hall of Fame is obviously a great example of that. We know that you coordinated the Maryland Women's History Project and are program director for the Maryland Women's Heritage Center.
Yes, I was lucky when I started working at the Maryland State Department of Education. Jill Moss Greenberg had started and initiated with the Commission for Women a Women's History Project. And I was fortunate enough to come in and adopt it, and had the biggest pleasure. For 20 years, we prepared kits for every school in the state, and my family used to laugh at me. I'd come home and say, I just interviewed and met the nicest, most terrific woman, Maryland woman, so I really learned a lot from that. So it was just a pleasure each year. We've focused on a certain area, like women in the arts, women in the suffrage movement, women in law, women in science and medicine. And it just opened my eyes tremendously to the range of contributions that Maryland women have made, past, present, and future.
You have to excuse us a little bit because there's some noise behind us. And that's the crowd coming in for the induction ceremony for the Women's Hall of Fame. Maybe we could talk a little bit more, though, about what do you feel most proud of in the achievements that you've had throughout your life?
I guess the few things, one, the Title IX, being in charge of monitoring the civil rights law that prohibits sex discrimination in education, and I've been doing it for 30 years, the longest serving Title IX coordinator at any state education agency. It's just amazing how many changes Title IX has made in opening areas to girls. It's for boys and girls, but particularly opening career areas for girls. Hillary Clinton has talked about it a lot. She had us at the White House for the 25th anniversary. This is the 40th anniversary of Title IX. And every area, from rights of pregnant students to admissions to different programs, and athletics has gotten so much press that it shows there were more women at the Olympics this year than men for the first time. So the pride in all of those accomplishments, and every school system has a Title IX coordinator who also does things within their own system.
If you had some personal words that you'd like to leave for the young people coming up, now I know you have a grandson, but I know that you have words for him as well as for the young girls coming up.
Yes.
Would there be any words that you would like to share and leave as a legacy?
I think it's true for both boys and girls to be interested in the accomplishments of both men and women and young boys and girls. But Margaret Mead once said, never doubt that a small group of citizens can change the world, in truth, it's
do you want to take two on that?
Yes, please.
All right, and take two.
Never doubt.
Thank you.
An action.
Never doubt that a small group of concerned, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And I think that if people find what it is that is important to them, to their families, their communities, and to society at large, and to know that we can all do it in any way that we can, and that's the legacy we want to leave.
One of the jewels in your crown is the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, which was a national first.
We were fortunate enough to still be working together on so many things, and Jill and I kind of got it started. She was the original founder, but it has been just a tremendous achievement. We've had so many people come by. Only 15 states have Halls of Fame, and the Hall of Fame is now in the Heritage Center. But I think the other thing is the unsung heroines, that we not only look at Hall of Fame inductees, but we look at all the contributions that women have made from diverse backgrounds in so many areas. And it is just, it's a love and a joy for not only us, but everyone that comes through visiting Maryland seems to really appreciate what the Heritage Center has done.
For all of us, and express a special appreciation to you from everyone who works at the Women's Heritage Center and at the State Department of Education, because you've made a tremendous difference, and I know you will continue to do that. Hi, welcome Ellen Sauerbrey. Congratulations on being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you. I consider this quite an honor.
Yeah, it is, and you're joining some tremendous company, as you know.
I am aware of that.
Yeah.
That's rather awesome.
It is. I know. It's very overwhelming almost, isn't it? Could you tell us a little bit what you think in your life led you into these endeavors that you've been in that have caused you to be such an achiever?
Well, I had parents who were very encouraging, and they created quite a competitive spirit in me at a very young age. But I really expected to be a high school biology teacher, and I had a true life-changing experience. My husband is a first-generation American. His parents were both born in Germany, and at that time Germany was divided by a wall, East and West Germany. And as young marrieds, we took a trip, spent a summer in Germany on both sides of the wall. And I have to say, it was the first time that freedom ever much occurred to me. What does that really mean?
That was a strong message.
But when I had the opportunity to see how differently people behaved and how prosperous people living in freedom were versus people living under an oppressive communist government, the behavior of the people was so dramatically different, the ability to accumulate capital. It had such an impact on me that I came home for the first time, got involved in political activity, and it went from there.
And you never left it once you began.
It's an incurable disease.
Yeah. Did you have anyone in your life that you consider a role model or a mentor to you?
Well, certainly from a role model perspective, I adore Ronald Reagan. He stood for the whole concepts of limited government and individual liberty that I believe in so strongly. My mother was a great and first mentor. In my third career in the State Department, one of the first people that I worked with was Jean Kirkpatrick. And I had just such a wonderful experience with her and looked up to her. And of course, Condi Rice as my final mentor.
It's a long legacy. Do you have any thoughts of what you've done that you feel most proud of?
I feel very proud from the political perspective that when I ran for governor, we almost doubled the number of Republicans in this legislature, and I feel very strongly about the need for a two-party system, which Maryland does not have very much of. So I was proud of that. I was proud of being the first woman that almost got elected. But the things that I'm most proud of came from my final career in the State Department. I had the opportunity to break a 20-year log jam as a strong diplomat in getting the two countries of Nepal and Bhutan to work together and release 50,000 Bhutanese refugees that had been living in a prison, in a refugee camp for 20 years. I also had the opportunity to convince the government of Jordan to educate Iraqi refugee children, which were at that time not allowed to go to go to school.
Getting no education
Getting
at
no
all.
education, some of them for the third year, and you know children without an education for 3 years, that's their future.
Absolutely.
So those two things, as I look back, I'm
especially proud of.
Very proud of being able
can
to
see why.
achieve.
Now, are there any personal comments you'd like to make as part of your legacy to the young people coming up now? What would you say to them and advise them, or any personal thoughts you have?
I think it's really important to have a big dream, a big idea, a big thing that you believe in passionately, that keeps you motivated and excited. And I think you follow that dream where it takes you. You don't let people tell you can't do it. Never let someone tell you you can't do something. That happened to me in my very early political endeavors, and I was told as a woman I couldn't win a legislative seat, and I did not let that stop me, and I won that legislative seat. But I think that I also think that women need to be risk takers more than they're willing to be. If I hadn't taken a risk and run for governor, which didn't work out.
And what year was that?
That was in 1994. And I gave up a very safe legislative seat in the process. But if I hadn't taken that risk, I would never have ended up doing the thing that was the most satisfying and gratifying of my life, which was the work that I did in the Department of State internationally.
That's a great example of taking the road that seems the less taken, and yet it leads to the one that you're most proud of.
I've always found it to be true that God closes a door and opens a window, and you just have to be ready when that window opens to see feel the breeze and see the path to whatever.
Well, that's wonderful to have that vision. Thank you again. And I just wanted to mention that you've heard some noise behind us, and that's people coming in for the ceremony, which will be happening soon. And that's why we have a little bit of an interruption, but we so much appreciate your thoughts. Are there any last thoughts you'd like to share?
To young women, act like a lady and work like a horse.
Thank you. We'll keep that message. Welcome again. This is Charlene Mickens Dukes, one of my favorite people for a very long time, and she's being honored to be inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
Well, thank you so much. I'm just absolutely delighted to be here. I am honored. I'm humbled. I think this is just amazing, and to think that there is something I've done to be sitting here next to you is just awesome.
Well, you are awesome, and I think we just were talking about how you are working on the State Board of Education,
yes,
which is preschool through 12th grade, and as well as at the community college, Prince George's Community College. So you're at all levels. Let me just interrupt for a minute to say that you're hearing all that noise behind us. These are the crowds gathering for the induction into the Hall of Fame. We want to explain to those watching the video that it isn't just that we're being unruly.
All right.
Okay.
All right. Well, it's amazing because I have been at Prince George's Community College since 1995. I came to Maryland as Vice President for Student Services, and just about almost 6 years ago, and on July 1 of 2007, I was appointed as president of the college, where we serve 44,000 students, and those students are doing great things all over the county, the region, and certainly the nation.
That's great.
And then I've had the pleasure of serving on the State Board of Education. Gubernatorial appointment, Governor O'Malley appointed me in 2007, and just this past July, I was elected president of the State Board after having served as vice president for probably just about 3 terms.
Mm-hmm. So you have a unique hat in being 2 presidents at once.
And you know, it's amazing because with the State Board of Education, we are, through policy and regulation, having the opportunity to touch the lives of almost 1 million children enrolled in Maryland's public schools. And as you know, it's all about education reform and change and how we support students.
Absolutely. Tell me, is there anything that you can point to in your early life? What led you to do this kind of work, and Why did it matter to you?
Well, I believe, and it has always been my mantra, that what led me here was coming from a family of service. And my parents were always about service and doing good work in the community. I have 8 brothers and sisters, and we were raised to do that, living next door to our grandparents, our aunts and our uncles, and even today, my mom and dad are always concerned about doing good for others and not necessarily concerned about having others do good for them.
Sounds wonderful. What do you feel most proud of?
Well, I tell this story often. My father graduated from high school and he wanted to be an architect. But at the time he graduated in the early 1940s, he was told that because he was good with his hands, he should pursue carpentry. My mom received her GED, her General Equivalency Diploma, when I was probably in the 8th or 9th grade, because I can remember sitting at the table and all of us helping her study. And for me, it was the opportunity that was provided through the civil rights movement, colleges and universities opening up to all types of students, and I always felt that I had this drive in me to do things that my parents couldn't do, but that they paved the way for us to do as their offspring. So that's what drives me. I have a son, and I hope that I'm serving in a way that when he looks back on his life, that he can take what I have tried to teach him and what his father has tried to teach him and do good things for people.
It's wonderful. Speaking of that and about your son and the next generation coming up, is there anything that you, on a personal level, like to share and leave as a legacy to say to those young people as a message?
Well, I think that we all have dreams and visions, and sometimes we don't necessarily accomplish those by moving down a straight and narrow road. Sometimes we have to turn left, sometimes we have to turn right. But we get right back on that road, and we don't let anyone deter us from what we know in our heart is our life's work. And that's what I've tried to do as I've moved through my journey. I didn't always want to be a college president. Quite frankly, I wanted to teach English in high school, and I wanted to teach grammar. But I started working in higher education, and for me, I found a niche, not just in higher education, but in community colleges when you talk about access and opportunity for those who are underserved or underrepresented. And that's what's been important to me.
It's wonderful and important, and we hope that a lot of younger generation coming up will heed that message and work on those things and not be deterred.
Exactly. I think we have both a right and an obligation to help and support, to mentor, to guide, and advise.
That is a beautiful capsule. Thank you so much, and congratulations.
Thank you,
again.
Jill. Thank you.
Hi. This interview is a little bit different because this is honoring Jean Cryor, who is deceased, but what a legacy she has left. And we're getting to interview today one of her daughters, Allison Cryor DiNardo, and she's kept her mother's name for her middle name, as I have with mine, so feel about it very much. So I'll be asking you about your mom, and which is wonderful to have a daughter talk about her.
Yeah, sure.
What was it about your mom growing up that helped shape how you and your sisters have grown?
Well, I think first of all, she was educated by the Religious and Sacred Heart, which are a group of very strong-willed, well-educated women who really believed that young women couldn't be limited by what they could do. She heard that message loud and clear, and she taught it to us as well. She was inspired by her father's love of reading. Her father died when she was young, right after he came back from World War II. He was a physician, and the one thing they loved to do together was to go to the library. And so it's always been a favorite of hers. And she was a voracious reader, and both fiction and nonfiction. And I think
And a wonderful writer.
And a good writer, too.
A wonderful event, and to have your mother honored is very special. Yeah. What do you think you feel most proud of in terms of her accomplishments?
Well, I think my mother was a real winner in so many ways. I mean, she was able to have a family, she had a career, she had multiple careers. You know, she was publisher of the Gazette newspapers, she was a state legislator, she was a member of the Planning Commission in Montgomery County, but she also was, she taught at Montgomery College, state and local government. There were so many parts that she was still always willing to try something new, and she would excel at it. And I think, you know, there are three of us.
We're so glad that your family is all here. It's a beautiful family, and you can feel the love you have for your mother and to see it come to the grandchildren. And we'll see your other sister, the third sister, Jennifer, in the ceremony in a little while.
Right. Thank you.
Do some more of the Cryor family and more of the legacy that Jean Cryor has left for our state and our nation. Could you tell us a little about yourselves?
So you want to say your name?
Say your
and
name.
How old you are?
I'm Anna and I'm 11. I'm Emma and I'm 13.
And my name is Deirdre Cryor. And I'm not going to say my age.
You're entitled. It's all right. Do you mind me asking what each of you feels most proud about your grandmother and your mother?
I think that's an easy question. Most proud of her life of service, that she really took very seriously, that we all have a responsibility to make the world a little bit better. And I think she did. I think she did for her community and definitely for our world. So anything you would say differently?
Same thing.
Same thing, yeah.
What'd you like most about her?
Her stories.
She did
Her
tell
stories.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Emma, you've been in elected office at school. Have you ever been elected to an office in elementary school? Yeah. So maybe there's a future right here.
And you have, right, your grandmother is a great inspiration. And I need to say she is and was an inspiration for me too. I'm so impressed that your grandmother and mother was instrumental in getting the Maryland Women's Heritage Center to exist. She was a great supporter and she crossed political lines. She really didn't judge people by what party they were in, but the kind of human beings they were.
And what story they told.
And what story they told. And she was extraordinary. And just for the record, I'd like to say, though, but she was elected Republican in a Democratic state, and she was the first Republican woman to ever chair the Women's Caucus in the Maryland State Legislature, and that is a very big achievement among her many achievements.
She was proud of it. We're honored for her, and I know she would have been thrilled with tonight, so that's fun.
I think we found the right place for her.
Yeah.
If she was going to give a message to the grandchildren or to other young people coming up, what do you think that message would be?
I think it would be that when are they going to run for office? I think she believed women needed to be in political office and be elected to office, so that's what her message would be, get women into office.